Hey friends, how's it going? My name is Gabby, welcome back to my channel, and today I have a very exciting book unhaul for you. It's been a while since I've done my last book unhaul video. I think the last one that I filmed was when I was moving out of my parents' house again and into this apartment. And so ever since living in this apartment for the last like 7 or 8 months now, I've just been collecting a lot of books that I've set aside for an unhaul. And so today we're going to be going through them. I have about 4 stacks of books that are almost as tall as I am when I'm sitting down. Like if I had to guess, I think there's at the very least, I think there's about 50 books here, if not probably more. We're talking more like 60, maybe 70 books. However, before jumping into the unhaul today, I just wanted to take a second to thank today's sponsor, which is HelloFresh. Because this summer you can skip on the meal planning and all of that extra time you spend at the grocery store with HelloFresh's pre-proportioned ingredients delivered right to your door. I know trying to figure out what's for dinner every single night can be so annoying and so time consuming, and that's what I love the most about HelloFresh is that they have over 40 different weekly meal options to choose from. Like there really is something for everyone. Even the pickiest of eaters can find something to enjoy with HelloFresh. I like that with HelloFresh you can really customize these meals to make them however you want to, so you can swap out a certain protein for a different protein, you can swap out a side for a different side. They really make it easy to learn some dishes that I would have assumed would be really complicated just by how fancy they look on this photo here, but they really break it down, you know, step by step, and they make it really easy to learn. I feel like every time that I, make food with HelloFresh, I feel like I'm always learning so much about cooking whenever I do. I've never been the biggest fan of grocery shopping. I just feel like it's such a huge waste of time, and so that's definitely a huge perk with HelloFresh is that the food will just get delivered right to your door and you don't gotta worry about going to the grocery store. And not only does it save you time with getting groceries, but it's also cheaper as well, and it's also 25% cheaper than takeout. I recently just made this dish, the meatloaves with creamy mushroom sauce with the green beans and the garlic mashed potatoes, and this dish was absolutely delicious. The flavor of this creamy mushroom sauce was so freaking good. I know that I'm gonna want to recreate this sometime soon because of how delicious the flavor was. So you can go to HelloFresh.com and use my code gabbyreads16 for 16 free meals plus free shipping. That's a lot of free food, so don't miss out on this deal. You go to HelloFresh.com, use my code gabbyreads16 to get 16 free meals and free shipping. That is incredible. Thank you so much to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. I really appreciate it. And now let's get on to the book unhaul. Okay, let's just jump right into it because I have a lot to get through. I don't think these are organized, by the way, in any kind of way. I just kind of was like pulling things off of my shelves frantically. Some things you're probably gonna be like, why the fuck do you still even have that? And like, I don't know, but I'm getting rid of it now. Okay, so this first stack that I have next to me, I have quite a large stack of romance books just right on the top that I'm planning to get rid of. One of the more recent books that I've hauled that I plan to unhaul is actually Jasmine and Jake Rock the Boat. This is one that I have just recently hauled within the last like 2 months or so, but I've tried to read this book. I got like, I want to say 10 to 20% of the way into the audiobook, and I was just not feeling it for some reason. I feel like sometimes with just reading the first like 10 to 30% of the book, I can tell right away if it's gonna be like my thing or not, and with this one, it was just like I couldn't get into it. I was immediately kind of irritated with the characters, and so I just feel like this one's gonna not be for me, so I felt like I might as well pass it on to somebody that will enjoy it. I'm also gonna be unhauling Do You Take This Man by Denise Williams. This is a romance that I read last year that I wasn't a big fan of. I can't even remember now, to be honest, if this was one that I finished or if this was one that I DNF'd. I honestly can't remember because of how forgettable this story was for me. I'm also gonna be unhauling Mistakes Were Made by Meryl Wilsner because even though this wasn't one that I necessarily disliked, I'm pretty sure I gave this one around 3 stars. Like this one just ended up being okay for me, and my romance shelf these days, it's already overflowing like as it is with all of my favorites, so anything that's not like a 5-star new favorite, I really don't see the point in me keeping. Same goes for A Cosmic Kind of Love, even though I am tempted to keep this book just because of this cover. Like I am such a space vibes bitch. Like I will literally keep anything that has like a cute little space cover, but this one was also one, I'm pretty sure I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It was just okay. I just don't have the space to keep this one. I'm also going to be unhauling these two, even though they are both unread. This one is Built to Last, and then this one is Whatcha Gonna Do. And the main reason why I'm unhauling this one is because I don't really see myself getting to it anytime soon, and holy shit, this one is getting such low reviews on on Goodreads. I think this one right now is averaging like a 3.2 out of 5, which is so shockingly low. And I think the main reason is because people are saying like the writing style is really like irritating, or the characters seem a lot younger than they are, which is usually like a huge thing that like annoys me in books. So I just have a feeling this one might not be my thing for those reasons. Then also Built to Last. This is another romance book that I have started it. I did DNF this one pretty early on. I just found right away that I just couldn't get into it. I don't know how to explain it. Sometimes I just know, like right away when I start the book, I'm like, yeah, no. Like sometimes the writing style just doesn't work for me. I feel like that was definitely the case for me with this one, unfortunately. I also think I'm gonna be unhauling this book called Out There, which is kind of a bummer because I haven't read this one yet. This one originally sounded cool to me because it's a bunch of LGBTYA authors, and this is like a collection of short stories that all take place in the future. Yeah, and it all follows like queer teens in the future. And this one, I don't know, it does sound cool, but at the same time, like it's just taking up so much space on my shelves, and these days I'm rarely ever reaching for young adult, especially like young adult that nobody's really talking about. And I don't know, I think if I ever do decide to pick this one up again in the future, I can probably just find the audiobook somewhere. Like I don't really see a reason to hold on to this physical copy, even though it's stunning, is it not? Like this is so beautiful. I'm also going to be unhauling Icebreaker. This was one that I have tried to read. Oh my gosh, I want to say I got almost 100 pages into this one before I DNF'd it, because holy shit, these characters were so annoying and driving me crazy, and the story just felt very insta-love like right off the bat. So I was like, yeah, no, I don't think this is for me. I'm also going to be unhauling The Reunion and Sorry Bro, because The Reunion was one that I really did not care for. I'm pretty sure I ended up giving this one like 2 stars. I just also thought that these characters were really annoying, and the whole thing with this book is that they're going to be having this reunion, you know, like it's these stars coming together again, but they had all of this like shared history that we didn't know about. And so I just found the reading experience of this one to be very frustrating, because they would talk a lot about like their history, but like we wouldn't know that history. It was like we were out of the loop the whole time. And then also Sorry Bro was a romance that I was really hoping to enjoy and really hoping to love, but this one also ended up being just okay for me. I had a lot of issues with the way that this book was written, and I just didn't connect with these characters the way that I wanted to. I was also quite frustrated by the ending of this book and how these characters handled certain situations. Next up for the unhaul, we have the Finlay Donovan. This is the second book, and then I also would be unhauling the third book. I actually already did unhaul the third book to my friend Brittany because I'm just not interested in continuing with the Finlay Donovan series. I don't know. It's so crazy to me, you know, because I loved the first book so much. Like the first book in the series was a 5 stars, and it was in my top 3 favorite books of the year. Like that's how much I really loved it. But then I feel like the second book and then the third book, like they just keep getting more and more of the same, you know, really repetitive and just kind of boring, and I'm just not I don't think I'm going to be continuing with the series, so I don't see any reason for me to hang on to these. However, I am going to be keeping the first book in the series just because of how much I love that book, but the second and then the third book, like, I don't see any reason to hang on to these. I'm also going to be unhauling Lucy by the Sea, which this one is one that I have not yet read, but when I got this book, I didn't realize at the time that this was actually a book that's like part of a series or something, and people were letting me know like, oh, you have to read the other books in the series to read this one. I also just think, you know, like this was something I was interested in reading at the time, but the more time that passes and the more that I just don't pick this one up, I just don't see myself picking this one up anytime soon, especially because this is I think this is like more of a literary fiction kind of book, and this is just not something I super gravitate towards a lot these days. I'm also going to be unhauling The Getaway because this was a young adult thriller kind of horror book that I read back in February. I read it a little earlier this year, and this book was good. I want to say I gave this one like 3 stars, but again, like I don't have any reason to hold on to books that I give 3 stars, you know, like they just end up being middle of the road books for me. And then I'm also going to be unhauling 3 different books that I read for that one thriller vlog that went very terribly because I read The Villa by Rachel Hawkins and I really did not enjoy it. I can't remember. I think I gave this one like 2 stars, maybe 3 stars. Like I was really not a big fan of this one. And then I also, in that same video, I read Just the Nicest Couple and Secluded Cabin Sleep 6, and I was just not having a good time. I can't remember now what my ratings for these were, I think I might have given this one 3 stars or maybe 2 stars, and then this one was definitely 2 stars or maybe even 1 star. I can't remember. I really didn't like these, and so I definitely want to be unhauling all of these thrillers. I'm also going to be unhauling Black Cake. Unfortunately, this was one that I actually read earlier this year. I think I read it in January, and this one has one of my favorite book covers of all time. Like, it's just so stunning, but unfortunately this book just didn't really work for me. I thought this book would be a little bit more hard-hitting than it ended up being, and I also feel like this is one of those books where there are just way too many characters for me to get invested in the situation. I thought the writing style, it was like hard to get into because it would go back and forth between the different characters' perspectives, and some of the characters had very similar sounding names, and I was just getting very confused, and it just wasn't the best reading experience for me, so I figured I would pass this on to somebody who would enjoy it a lot more. Okay, and then this next stack of books, this is so embarrassing because these are actually a lot of my own BookTube book club picks, mostly from the year of 2022, I think. And okay, 2022 was not a good year for me in terms of the BookTube, okay? It was not a fun time. I had a lot of books that I really thought were either just very meh or I didn't enjoy them at all. I'm gonna be unhauling Where They Found Her by Kimberly McCreight. This was actually our BookTube pick from last January 2022. I know, I've held on to it so long. I actually do keep all of my BookTube picks through at least the end of the year, because then I like to be able to have them all in my, you know, possession for when I do like the live shows at the end of the year, because at the end of the year I love to do the BookTube Superlatives live show where we talk about like our favorites, our least favorites, and all that stuff, so I hang on to every BookTube selection for the whole year. But it's finally time to get rid of Where They Found Her. This one was just okay for me. I didn't hate it, but it was like a 3 star. It was very forgettable. Unlike, oh my gosh, The Haunting of Ashburn House, no, this was a 1 star, maybe 1 star, maybe 2 star, I can't remember now, but I really did not like this one. This one was one of my first experiences, I think, with a cozy kind of horror, and I think I've realized that cozy horror is just not for me, or maybe it's just Darcy Coates that's not for me, I don't know. I'm also going to be unhauling The It Girl by Ruth Ware, because even though this was one that I actually didn't mind that much, I think I gave this one like 3 stars, it still is just like, it's not a good enough book for me to want to like hold on to it. I'm also gonna be unhauling Jackal because, again, this is one that I wanted to love so desperately. And at the beginning, this was even looking like it could have been a 5 star, you know, like that's how much I was enjoying it at the beginning. But then this ending of this book just slowly started to unravel, and I started disliking it more and more and more the more that we continued reading. So unfortunately, this one just didn't end up working for me very much. And even though, you know, once again, I'm tempted to keep it because of this absolutely gorgeous cover, like honestly, that's reason enough for me to want to be tempted to keep it, but I don't think I'm gonna hang on to this. I'm gonna pass this on. And then also I have some more 1 star reads from my book club. Oh my god. 9 Lives by Peter Swanson and Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. Oh, like I said, last year was a bit of a struggle because both of these ended up being 1 stars, and I really did not have a fun time with either one of these. Right, next up, I'm gonna be unhauling It's Me, Charlie. Do I even have to explain myself here? This was a, you know, very short horror novella that I read based on a prompt that I pulled out of my Patreon jar, you know, to read an extreme horror. An extreme horror I have quickly discovered is like not really my thing. I don't think it's really my thing. This is one of the only books I've ever read that I did not even rate because I just don't think it would be fair to rate this book because it is extreme horror. I knew exactly what I was getting myself into, and I know now why extreme horror is not for me. There's one scene in this book that has still traumatized me to this day that I think about, and I just like, I get nauseous just thinking about it, and it's not fun. I'm also going to be unhauling One of Us Is Lying because this is a young adult thriller that I just recently read, I want to say like a month or 2 ago, and while I did enjoy this book kind of, I mean, I gave it like 3 stars, it was very middle of the road for me, but I just don't see myself continuing with the series, and you know, because I thought this book was so, I don't know, like mid for me, I don't see myself keeping this on my shelves because this one is thick too. I feel like sometimes I can justify like keeping a book when it takes up less space on my shelves. I don't know why that is. I'm also gonna be unhauling Sweet Filthy Boy by Christina Lauren. I know you're probably like looking at me like, why do you even own this book? I used to be really into Christina Lauren. Like this was Christina Lauren's like early stuff, right? They had these 4 books called the Wild Seasons like books, and this is the first book in that set of a series, and their old books used to be very like very erotic and like very adult, and this was the first book in that series. And I absolutely loved this book back when I read it in like, I want to say 2015, 2016. This was a long time ago. But now, I don't know, I really don't know if I would enjoy something like this now. And to be honest, I just don't really want to keep this on my shelves anymore because she's not that cute. You know, it's very bright orange. It's just very not my thing. And also, I was like rereading parts of this just to see. I was like, oh well, let me see what I wrote in here before, like the first time that I read it, and I was like, oh yeah, like I don't know about that now. And so like I don't even think I would enjoy this if I read it now. I mean, to be fair, I don't know for sure, but I just don't see myself wanting to keep this on my shelves any longer. I'm sorry. I'm also gonna be unhauling Darling Rose Gold because this is a thriller that I read a number of years ago now, and this was actually one that I really enjoyed for the most part. I think I gave this one 4 stars, but it's just been sitting on my shelves, and every time I look at it, I'm like, why am I holding on to this? You know, like I don't have any real reason to hang on to this because it's not like a favorite of all time. Same goes for, you know, this book Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. As much as I enjoyed this one, I want to say I gave this one maybe like 3.5 stars. I'm at that point where I'm just like, if a romance is not like an all-time favorite, then I really just don't want to hang on to it because of the limited amount of space on my romance bookshelf right now. It's the same situation for Regretting You by Colleen Hoover. This one, I remember really enjoying the mother and daughter relationship in this one, but as far as like the romance in this goes, I can't even remember off the top of my head if I enjoyed the romance in this book or not. I know that there's like 2 romances going on. There's one love story with like the mom, and then there's one love story with the daughter, and I think I was a lot more invested in the one with the mom. But I feel like, I don't know, with Colleen Hoover these days, I don't really feel the same need to like keep and hold on to her books the same way that I used to. I think if anything, I'm probably just gonna pass this one on to my mom because I know my mom tends to enjoy Colleen Hoover books even more than I do these days. I'm also gonna be unhauling this copy of Wahala by Nikki May. This was a thriller that I was really interested in reading at the time, but this copy that I have is so, you know, frustrating. It's like a really early ARC copy. I actually found this one in the bookstore, but it has this like really sticky like cover and it gets stuck to everything. Like I'm sure you can see there's like little stuff getting stuck to it because anytime I have it in a book stack, stuff keeps getting stuck to it and it's really annoying. And also, ever since this book has come out, it's just gotten very mediocre reviews on Goodreads, and it's starting to make me feel like, oh, maybe this won't even be my thing anyways. And so I feel like I'm gonna unhaul this one for those reasons. I'm also going to be unhauling I Let You Go by Claire McIntosh, and this is another situation where I did enjoy this book. This is like a mystery thriller book. I think I gave this one 4 stars, but again, because it's not an all-time favorite, I don't really see myself hanging on to this. But if you haven't read this book, I do think this book has one of the most like shocking plot twists towards the end of the story. Like I do think this is a really well-written thriller. It's just not one of my personal faves, and I think it's mostly the pacing in this book. I feel like sometimes it feels more like a romance at times, or more like a, you know, like a woman finding herself again in a small beach town kind of vibe. I will also be unhauling The Drift by CJ Tudor because this is one that I really did not enjoy. This is actually one that I gave 1 star. Oof! I'm so sorry to CJ Tudor and to the world because I really wanted to love this one. I really did. The premise sounded so cool, but this shit was just so repetitive and so boring, and all of the characters read like exactly the same person, and I just did not have a fun time with this one, so I will be unhauling. I'm also going to be unhauling The Golden Spoon. This is another kind of more recent one that just went on sale in April, and this is a kind of more on like the cozy mystery side of things. I really thought that I could love this one, but this was another one that ended up being such a freaking bummer. And I think I went into this one with like maybe the wrong expectations or something. I don't know. I think the hype for this one was just really built up in my head, and so by the time that I read it, I was just like, this is not what I was expecting it to be, but like not in a fun way. Also going to be unhauling White Horse, which this one's a thriller that I read. I think I read this one at the very end of last year, and this is another case where the book was fine-ish. I think I gave this between like 2 to 3 stars, but it's not something that I see myself ever, you know, reading again or holding on to. I'm also going to be unhauling Someone Had to Do It. This one is a thriller that I was very interested in. This is one that unfortunately I ended up DNFing. I think I stopped reading this one about like 50 to 100 pages in, I want to say, maybe even further. I can't remember now. But this is one that I think I'm going to unhaul because I just don't think this is the kind of thriller for me. I feel like this one is mostly focused on like the story of like revenge and these 2 girls blackmailing each other, and there was just, I remember there being like a lot of sex scenes, and it was just very slow moving, and I just didn't care that much about what was going on. I also very recently ended up DNFing The Only Survivors by Megan Miranda, as well as Lunar Love. These These are two books that I've tried to read, I want to say in the last like month or two, and I want to say I got about 100 pages into this one before I ended up calling it quits. Like, I just did not care about a single thing that was going on in this story, and I'm starting to feel like maybe Megan Miranda as an author just isn't really for me. I feel like anytime I try to read one of her thrillers, I just feel like my eyes glaze over and I get so freaking bored. I also tried to get into Lunar Love, and this was a romance that I was pretty excited about, but also like right off the bat, I don't know, I think I want to say like 50 to 100 pages into this one as well, and I just was not feeling the chemistry between these two at all, and I don't know, the characters were already kind of driving me nuts from the beginning. I wasn't a huge fan of the writing. I just knew right away that this one was not going to work for me. Also planning to unhaul Hex, because this is a horror novel that I want to say I enjoyed this one. I think I gave this one somewhere between like 3 stars, maybe 3.5 stars, but again, this is a horror novel that I don't ever see myself rereading this in the future. Like, there's no point for me to hang on to this because this is not one that I'm going to go around like recommending a bunch because I only gave it 3 stars. And I'm also going to be unhauling The Marsh Queen. This is a book that I also gave, I want to say I gave this between 3 to 3.5, maybe even 4 stars, but this is not something that I would go around like widely recommending either. It reminds me a lot of like Where the Crawdads Sing. It's like, it's a good book, kind of. It's just not my thing, you know? It's just not really my thing, not really what I gravitate towards. And I'm also going to be unhauling Begin Again by Emma Lord because this is a young adult contemporary book that I very recently just read, and this one was okay. It was very like middle of the road for me. I think I gave this one 3 stars. I know I sound like a broken record when I say this, but I don't have any reason to hang on to books that I give 3 stars these days, you know? I really don't. So 3 of my most recent reads that I'm going to be unhauling that make me kind of sad is 19 Claws and a Blackbird. This is a horror novel that is pretty brand new. This one actually goes on sale June 20th, and I'm going to be unhauling it because I read it last month, and I just was not the biggest fan of this. It's a collection of short horror stories. There's 20 stories in this collection, and I literally only cared about like 2 of them, and I just wasn't the biggest fan. And because I know that this book is such a hyped book right now, like people want to get their hands on this book, I'm like, why would I hold on to it and keep it then? You know, like I'm gonna pass it on to somebody else in the world so that they can hopefully find some enjoyment in this, because I certainly did not. And I'm also going to be unhauling Lone Women, and this is for similar reasons, because even though I did for the most part enjoy this one, it was still like about a 3 star for me, and so I'm sure there's somebody out there that would enjoy this even more, because this was mostly like not for me because it was very like, I don't know, historical, and it had some like fantasy aspects. It just wasn't really my genre or my taste, so I know there are plenty of other readers out there who would probably really enjoy this one. And also the For You and Only You by Caroline Kepnes. This is the 4th book in the Joe Goldberg, you know, You series, and this is another series, you know, that I think I'm done. I think I'm done with these books. I don't really see myself continuing with the series anymore after 4 books. They're just starting to feel a little bit repetitive, you know, like a little too much of the same shit. And so I think I'm going to be unhauling this book. I think I already have unhauled the 2nd and the 3rd book. I don't think I ever even owned the 2nd one though. But I did unhaul the 3rd book already. I still own the 1st book though, because I do love the 1st book, but this one, I just don't see any need to hang on to this. Also gonna be unhauling A Dash of Salt and Pepper, because this is a romance that I read at the end of last year, and this one was cute for the most part, but it was also just very forgettable. It's this male-male romance, and I just wasn't a huge fan of the way this one was written, I guess. I feel like the protagonist, he was written in a way that made him seem very young and very immature, and just, I don't think he was intended to be written that way, but that's just how he came across. I'm also going to be getting rid of Partners in Crime. This is one that I think I started and I ended up DNFing this book. I want to say I DNF'd it around like 60 pages in. It just right away was like, nope, not for me, which is such a shame because this cover is so freaking cute. Like, I absolutely love the colors on this cover, and I think it's so beautiful, but that's not a reason to keep books. And these next couple books are all books that I started and DNF'd. Like, another one is Sizzle Reel. This is another one that I had high hopes for this one because the protagonist is a cinematographer. Like, how freaking cool is that? And she's bisexual, she's trying to figure out her shit, and then it's about how she's starting to fall for this 28-year-old A-list actress. It sounded like it was going to be everything, but oh my gosh, this friend group was driving me absolutely nuts. I did not like the writing style. I thought the main character was so annoying right from the beginning, so this is definitely a no from me. I also tried getting into I Love It When You Lie. This one is a thriller that follows this family that has all of these secrets. I tried listening to this one on audio, and after I was getting into it, I think I almost got 100 pages into this before I decided to DNF it, because all of the sisters just read exactly like the same. Like, they just all sounded exactly the same, and I just was not invested in anything that was going on in this one. And then I'm also going to be unhauling, I have 2 copies of Never Ever Getting Back Together. This one is a like young adult kind of show. It's almost like a show where it's like The Bachelor, and then the 2 girls on the show end up falling for each other instead. And it sounds like my dream kind of book. But I think because this book is young adult, oh my gosh, I tried to read this book 2 separate times, and then I tried listening to the audiobook, and I just cannot get into this book for the life of me. Like every time I try to start reading this book, I want to like roll my eyes and just be like, oh my god, these characters are so fucking annoying. Like I can't get through it. So I'm gonna be unhauling both of these. I'm also gonna be unhauling this book called Dead in Gondola. This was a book that was included in like a book mystery box that got sent from the publisher, and this was one that at first I thought maybe it could be my thing, but I don't know, lately these days I am just not in the mood to read like anything kind of like cozy mystery. Like that is just not my vibe lately, and so I just feel like this one probably won't be for me. As well as there was this book called The Accomplice that was also sent in that same book box, and this is one that I just don't know if I'm really interested in reading this one. I also feel like this one's been out for a couple of years now, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody talking about it. And I usually feel like when there's a thriller that's been out for a long time and I've never heard anybody mention it once, I'm always like, well, there must be a reason for that, right? Like it's just not that great. And this one doesn't have that great of reviews on Goodreads either, which like I know those things don't really matter, but at the same time, like I just don't want to invest all of my time and energy into reading this right now, so I think I'm gonna unhaul it. And then one that I was kind of excited about is this one, The Things We Do to Our Friends, mostly because holy shit, this cover is absolutely stunning. But since picking this one up, this one has gotten absolutely terrible reviews on Goodreads, like so shockingly low reviews. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, usually like when that ends up happening, I don't know, I get freaked out anytime I'm gonna read a book that has lower than like a 3.5 on Goodreads. I mean, usually when it comes to the horror genre, I don't mind the lower ratings because I feel like horror is just very subjective sometimes, but usually with thrillers, if a book has lower than a 3.5, I get very like, maybe I shouldn't waste my time picking that up, you know? And this is one of those cases. I'm also going to be unhauling The Appeal because this is one that I did try to read this a number of years ago when I first got this book. And this one, as much as I like the idea of the storytelling aspect of it, I also think it makes it a little bit confusing and like hard to get into, because almost all of this story is told through like emails and like articles, just different notes and different things like that. Like it's not really told in a conventional way, which does sound kind of fun, but also just kind of like it would make it really hard to get into. And that was the case for me when I DNF'd this. I think I only got about 50 pages in and then I DNF'd it. And then I was seeing a lot of my friends not really giving this one high reviews anyways. So then I was like, okay, like I don't really know if this is going to be for me or not. I mean, if you read this one and you just absolutely loved it and you think that this is something I would really fucking just eat this shit up, then like I could be convinced to keep this one. But for now, I think I'm gonna be unhauling. I also have a stack of Book of the Month books that are, for the most part, these are all books that I have not yet read. Some of them I have tried a little bit of. Like for example, The Devil Takes You Home. This is one that was a pick from August last year. I actually did try reading this book, I think at the end of last year or very early this year. And this was just kind of clearly like not my thing right from the start. Like I don't know, I just wasn't really invested in the characters or the story or anything that was going on, so I think I'm going to be unhauling this one. And then I'm also going to be unhauling Like a Sister because this is another one that I've had it on my shelf for quite some time now, like over a year. This was a pick from last April, and this is another thriller that gets shockingly low reviews on Goodreads, and I'm just kind of like, okay. Also going to be unhauling A Nearly Normal Family because oh my gosh, okay, this is embarrassing because this has been sitting on my shelf since June 2019. And I'm just like, okay, look at myself, bestie, look at myself in the mirror. If I haven't gotten to a thriller within 4 years, I'm clearly not that excited to pick it up. I feel like this one's also one that I have tried to read this a few times over the years. I think every time that I try to get into this book, I only get like 50 pages in before I get bored out of my freaking mind. So it's time for me to unhaul it. It's past time. I probably should have unhauled this like 2 years ago, but for what reason I was hanging on to it, I don't know. I'm also going to be unhauling The Wilder Women by Ruth Emmy Lang because even though I did just read a book from this author and I really enjoyed it, the book Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstance, this is their newest release and this one is not getting the best of reviews. Like I'm just kind of shocked. Like this one has like a 3.5 or maybe even lower than that on Goodreads. And I don't know, like there is nothing more discouraging for me than a book of this nature because I'm pretty sure this is like a literary fiction kind of like magical realism book. So for a book like this to be getting that lower reviews, it's just kind of shocking to me. I just don't think I want to invest the time, especially if it's something that's going to be a little bit out of my comfort zone as well. Then I think I'm also going to be unhauling The Light Pirate. And this one is another one of those kind of like literary fiction books. I know it sounds like it's going to be really beautiful, and I'm sure that it probably is, but I am just not in the mood these days to read literary fiction books. And so I know that this is just gonna sit on my shelves literally forever if I don't unhaul it now. And I also have This Close to Okay, which this is another book that has been sitting on my shelves since December 2020. Like, oh my gosh, what the heck? It's been like 2.5 years. And I just always tell myself like, oh, I'm gonna read it. And then I just don't. And then this one also, it's just not getting the best of reviews. And so this is another one where I don't gravitate towards this genre as much anymore. It's not something I'm reaching towards. And it's been sitting on my shelves for 2.5 years. Like, if I haven't read it by now, I'm not gonna read it. All right, and then I have these two thrillers, which these are both thrillers that I also have started and DNF'd, and that includes Mirrorland and The Resemblance. Mirrorland is a thriller that came out a couple of years ago. I tried reading this one somewhat recently, like I want to say within the last year. I don't know why, I just couldn't get into this one for the life of me, and I think I'm just kind of done with like the twin thing in thrillers. Like, I'm just kind of bored by the twin thing, and so I don't really see myself picking this book up again in the future, even though it's getting like somewhat decent-ish reviews, but I've also seen a lot of people really not liking this one. I don't know, I just don't think I'm gonna end up reading this one. And then same goes for The Resemblance. This one kind of hurts me more though, because I was really excited to read this one, but this is another one that I got a few chapters into this one. I want to say I at least got 50 pages in, and I just could not get invested. I was not a big fan of the writing style. Like, right away I just felt like the writing felt very kind of dull and just like hard to get into. And so this is one that I don't think it's gonna be for me. I don't want to spend time reading it. I'm sorry, this sucks. I wanted to love this book. Okay, these last three that I have, I could be persuaded to keep these because I feel so like mixed feelings about unhauling these. But the first one is going to be Darkroom Etiquette by Robin Rowe. I know you're all like looking at me sideways right now because this is one of my most anticipated reads of last year. This one's actually a young adult, I think it's like young adult thriller, young adult horror, and this is the same author as A List of Cages, which is one of my favorite young adult books ever. I tried getting into the audiobook, I want to say like last November, like whenever this came out, and I got at least like 50 pages into this book, but I was just struggling, like I couldn't get into this one, and I don't know why. I don't know if it was just me at the time, like I don't know what the situation was, but I could not get into this book, and so maybe I just need to give it more time or something. Like, I don't really know, but if you've read this book, let me know if you think it's worth keeping and like worth pushing through the kind of like slow beginning. Like, I don't know, I just could not get invested in this. And then same goes for this book, A History of Fear. This is one that I did start. Oh, I actually did keep my bookmark in here, but I got 65 pages in, and this is one that sounds like it could have been so interesting. So on the inside here, it does say it's an eerie literary suspense debut, and it's about how this guy murders his classmate and then he says the devil made him do it. And I don't know, I just thought the beginning was just very slow paced for me. You know, I got 65 pages in and I was just super like not invested, and I couldn't even pay attention to it. I feel like this one maybe just wouldn't be for me, but again, if you've read this one and you just absolutely loved it, then let me know why you think that I should keep this one, because I can be convinced with this one. And then same goes for Spells for Forgetting. This is one, again, this is another one that I DNF'd. I feel like it's just not for me. I feel like the characters just read very young and it felt very young adult, but I think the main reason why I really want to keep this one is because this edition is just absolutely stunning. Oh my god. And so I really just don't want to have to get rid of it. So I'm kind of just like, I might hold on to this just so like in the future maybe I can try it again when I'm like in a different mood. Like maybe in the future if I'm just like really in the mood for something that kind of feels like young adult, then maybe I'll pick this up. I don't know, but I just, I don't want to get rid of this because it's so beautiful, you know? Yeah, to anybody who's wondering, like, what do I even do with these books when I unhaul them? I do have a few in real life friends who do read that I pass on books to pretty often. So that's always a really great resource, especially when it comes to ARCs, you know, because a lot of bookstores or like other places won't take ARC copies. So I love having friends that I can pass on books to for that reason. But you can also drop off ARCs in like little free libraries and like different things like that. There's a few used bookstores that also might accept ARCs as well. I also, every now and then, I'll just like take a whole bunch of books and like donate them to like Value Village or Goodwill or like anything like that in the area. There's a lot of used bookstores that take books in my area. You could also take them to Half Price Books and sell the books if you want to. They obviously don't pay for ARCs, but if you want to take any of like, you know, books that you bought and you take them and get money, I think Half Price Books is so awesome because you can sell the books and you can get cash like that day for the books, but at the same time, they don't pay like really well. well. Like, I don't know, sometimes I've taken like over 100 books there and I only get about like $100, so it's really only like $1 per book essentially, but it's still a really great resource if you have a half price books in your area. I sadly do not. The closest half price books to me is like an hour and a half away, so it's not the most convenient option, but it's still an option. Thank you so much for watching as always. Let me know if you would still like to see me do unhaul videos in the future, because I know some people just really enjoy watching unhauls, and I think I understand it. You know, it's like you just get an overview of like a lot of reasons why people don't want to hold on to the books, and I think it's really fun for me to do an unhaul at least once or twice a year, you know, just to really clear out my shelves and kind of see what I want to prioritize going forward. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if there are any books on this whole list of books that you desperately think that I need to keep and read. Again, with those last three, I can definitely be convinced about any of these three to hold on to them if you think that there's something really special. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye!